Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bobby Valentine to Hanashima Show. Yeah, it's our show. I'm with Frankie Rampin, and we're ready to talk baseball of the week, MLB style. Major concern about all the Japanese players, and we want to talk about those players to any of those who are there in Japan and might have missed the week's action. So what did we have, Frankie, other than we just passed Easter week, and Easter is really celebrated here in the States, not so much in Japan. What did you have for dinner over at the Rampin House for Easter dinner?
Yes, Bobby, Easter just passed. Big Easter dinner here at the Rampin household. We always host family, about 15 people. Big dinner. We're an Italian family, so we had lasagna, nice pasta dish with some meatballs. We had turkey, we had stuffing, we had mashed potatoes, gravy, all that good stuff. Unbelievable. Full plates, full table the whole way down. We were eating good this weekend, Bobby. How about you?
And how does that work, Frankie? Does your mom make it all, or do people bring things and add to the joy?
Well, my mom and my grandmother, they are big cooks, so they're making a majority of the action. They're going to do it all the couple days before Easter, and they're going to make pretty much the entire thing. A couple of family members, aunts, uncles will come and help out a little bit, but majority of that work is my mom and grandma. So kudos to them. They're unbelievable.
And last thing, how about dessert? What did mom special up for dessert?
Oh, yeah. We had some pies. We had cheesecake, my grandma's famous cheesecake, apple pie, so much good stuff. We had this thing called a dirt cake, which was basically just crushed up Oreos with chocolate pudding. Unbelievable. So good.
You're going to have to bring some pictures next time that happens and have people see your the way your mom makes that spread. She's spectacular. And the spread of the week happened to be, once again, a lot of the Japanese pitchers taking the Hill of Thrills, as they call it, the mound, so that they could pitch at the major league level. And a pretty good batter in Chicago staying hot.
Yes, that batter you're talking about, Seiya Suzuki, his batting average up over 290 now, up into the top end of the league. He is one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball for the hottest offense in baseball. The Chicago Cubs has scored the most runs of any team in baseball. A lot of runs were scored at Wrigley Field when the wind is blowing out. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But Seiya Suzuki staying hot after an unbelievable start. He keeps his April going.
And a cool new uniform this year for the Cubs.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, Chicago Wrigley Field, which is similar to Koshien in Japan, where it has great tradition, and the fans are all close together and enjoying the game every game. But the two very unique things about Wrigley Field, or even three, one, that it's so old. It's the second oldest ballpark in the United States at the major league level, behind Boston, which was in 1912. Boston Fenway Park was built. But Chicago Wrigley has the uniqueness of the wind because it's close to the lake, and Lake Michigan, which Chicago is built on, has these horrid winds that blow. And when they blow out, it's a hitter's paradise. And when they blow in, it's really hard to hit the ball out of the park. And the difference is night and day, in that at one time, Wrigley Field only had day games. And then 20 years ago, they put lights in, because this ballpark is built right in the middle of a neighborhood, and the fans didn't want lights on at night to keep them up in all of their apartments that they live in all around Wrigleyville. But finally, the vote was passed and lights were put up. And so about half of the games are played at night and half in the daytime. But as soon as that wind blows, it dictates what kind of game it's going to be. Another uniqueness of Wrigley Field, Frankie, is, what do they call it? The basket.
The basket,
right?
Yes, on the outfield wall.
On the outfield wall, they have this chain link fence that protrudes out from the wall. And a home run can go up and get caught in the basket, not into the stands, and still be a home run. Now, many people wonder, why do they have that basket? Do you have any idea why they made that basket? Because it wasn't always there.
Yeah, Wrigley Field, obviously the second oldest ballpark in all of baseball, like you mentioned, built in 1914, right? So 2 years after Fenway Park was built. They used to just have that ivy wall, right? And when the fans were out there, they didn't have the bleachers. Once the bleachers were put up, fans would get out there. They'd get all rowdy. That's one of the most rowdy crowds in all of baseball, specifically the bleachers at Wrigley Field. Fans would start walking on the edge of the fence, and they'd fall down onto the field. So that net was placed there so that the fans could not fall down onto the field and get into the way of play anymore.
Yeah, actually, they would have races on the top of the wall. The wall would come up, and the wall was flat, and it was narrow. And when you said the fans were rowdy, that's because they would drink all day long, and they would have these challenges and these races along the top of the wall where guys would go, and often guys or gals would fall onto the field. So eventually they built this canopy, this basket that will catch a person if they fall. And the wall now is also slanted on the top. It's not flat. So it's really hard to walk on, huh? So they made 2 adjustments to keep the drunken people off of the wall and keep them from falling on. But, this week when the Cubs were at home, the wind was blowing out often. And consequently, what happened to their favorite son, their left-hander on the mound?
Yes, so Shota Imanaga pitched against the Los Angeles Dodgers for the second time already this season, and this time was at Wrigley on a day when, unfortunately for him, the wind was blowing out. He ended up giving 3 home runs up on the game, but, if you watch the home runs, they were fly balls that would have been outs in a majority of the ballparks, probably 25 to 28 ballparks. That would have just been a regular flyout, and even at Wrigley Field on a not-so-windy day might have been a flyout. So some tough luck for Imanaga. Did end up giving 5 earned runs on the day. Not a typical Imanaga start that Cubs fans and all of us fans are used to seeing from him, but he was still able to battle, and the Cubs did come back and win that ball game, 11-10.
11-10. That shows you that when you hit it up, the ball went out, and the Cubs were the last one standing to win that game.
Yeah, what an unbelievable game. And now 2 games already in the short season at Wrigley where the wind was really blowing out. We've seen double-digit scoring from both teams, and the Cubs ended up taking both of them. Double-digit wins twice this week for the Cubs in a blowing out windy city.
Yeah, I happened to play there the last game I played in the National League, Frankie. My last at-bat, I got a base hit against Willie Hernandez. The wind wasn't blowing out, but it was a good line drive to left field, and I checked the box as my last at-bat in the National League.
Hey, did exactly what you had to do. When the wind's blowing in at Wrigley, you got to hit line drives through that wind. So like the pro you were, Bobby, able to do that.
Well, that's what was happening there in Chicago. And in L.A. with the Dodgers, they had a little up and down week. And a lot of the down revolved around the new Papa on their team who – everyone had the spotlight on. Once again, Shohei Ohtani was the main interest of conversation, mainly because he wasn't hitting for the first time in a Dodger uniform. And everyone said, well, maybe it's because he's a new Papa. Well, let's just understand that Shohei he's a genius, and he's a man of habit and routine. And his routine is spectacular. When he wakes up in the morning and gets ready to play, that routine obviously was disrupted a little naturally because there's a newborn in his house. So maybe his sleep, which is his number 2 thing, other than playing baseball, number 2 is sleep. Now, number 2 might have to be family because you don't get as much sleep when you have a newborn in the house. So I think he went 1 for 14. He looked out of rhythm and out of sort. And then finally yesterday, after 14 at-bats, he came back to being Shohei and put some numbers up, Frankie.
Yeah, after what seemed like an eternity for Shohei Ohtani, 3 hits last night, 2 doubles and a triple. Absolutely ripping balls against the Pirates, looking like Shohei of old. Look at this. He's not even at second base yet. The guy picked up the ball. I'm going. Not a chance you're going to get me. Shohei's blazing speed. He's so good, fun to watch. And it's so funny to see that for the first time, really, I don't know, in a couple years, he had a prolonged slump, which was 4 games? And everyone was like, oh, Shohei, the new kid. He's just fine. And Bobby, I always think about something you tell me, that he's the best recovery. He has the best recovery. He's the best sleeper that you may have ever seen. This definitely had a little bit of effect on that, but I don't expect it to affect him any longer. He's one of one. He's a unicorn. He's the unicorn of baseball. And speaking of a unicorn of baseball, another interesting matchup happened this week at Dodger Stadium. Paul Skeens took on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. One of the most anticipated pitching matchups that will be of the whole season. 2 of the aces of the league went head-to-head, toe-to-toe, and both had their A stuff. Yamamoto ended up going 5 2/3, did end up giving up a run. Paul Skeens was lights out, going 6 1/3, gave up no runs, struck out 9. But Yamamoto looked very good in this game, and he's just continuing to improve throughout the season and really just dominate hitters.
Yeah, he understands pitching, and so many of the Japanese pitchers can pitch, not necessarily throw like a lot of the MLB pitchers. They just get out and throw it as hard as they can and hope for the best. He actually has a plan, and he has a repertoire of pitches that really work at the major league level. If he stays healthy, he's going to be right there at the Cy Young votes at the end of the year and earning every dollar that the Dodgers are paying him.
Yeah, him, Paul Skeens, and Yamamoto probably going to be at the top of that Cy Young race throughout the rest of the season. So that was a very much anticipated matchup. Another Dodgers starter, Loki Sasaki, continuing to improve and make himself a force into this Dodgers rotation, continues to move farther and farther into games, pitching 5 2/3 the other night against the Pirates. He didn't get the win because they were not winning when he came out, but the Dodgers ended up winning this game 8-4. 4 strikeouts in this game for him and only 2 walks. So that command continues to improve.
Yeah, he's really getting a feel for the MLB ball and his fingers for his split finger, which, as you see, is really hard to hit. Looks like it's a strike and then becomes a ball and often is swung at, but also throwing more sliders now, which is a pitch that he needs to throw to complete his arsenal of fastball at 90, mid-90s, and split and slider. 3 pitches, not 2, is what he needs. And the progress is being made remarkably, because for a young guy to be with the Dodgers and play before full houses all the time, have great expectation coming out of Japan as he did, with Rookie of the Year honors already being given to him before he even gets to a major league ballpark. So far, it's been more than I expected. And from everything I see, it looks like he's progressing up.
And what a way to bounce back from what was a pretty tough start. His first start of his career wasn't so good. A couple more starts after that didn't go the way he wanted to. But what a bounce back he's had. And like you said, as a young 23-year-old, same age that I am, continue to talk about this. I could never imagine doing what he's doing, and he just continues to fight through it. And him and Yamamoto, Sasaki and Yamamoto, seem like they're kind of doing it in a similar way. So Yamamoto using that curveball a lot more, Sasaki using that slider a lot more. They're going to need more than 2 pitches to be starters, like you've mentioned throughout these past weeks. And they've been doing it at a much better and successful rate over these last couple weeks.
Yeah, and they're on the same team, but they're not at the same level. Yamamoto is a much higher pitcher, much more skilled, much more battle-tested. And the one thing that you're going to start seeing is that Dodger rotation, which was supposed to have so many great arms, and don't have that many great arms anymore because of so many injuries to their starters. But they're gonna have to stretch it out a little and try to stay away from the day games. The day games, which is a short rest week when you're on a 5-man rotation, and then your next rotation comes from a night game to a day game. You're actually losing 6 to 8 hours of recovery time, which is very crucial at the major league level. Usually your stuff isn't as sharp, and it takes a lot of adjustment, especially for Japanese pitchers who are not used to the 5-man rotation and really not used to pitching on short rest. I think you saw that this week with Yosei Kikuchi with the LA Angels, where he pitched in a day game. He gave up like 9 hits, all of them singles. His control command was just off a little. His velocity was off a little. And I think it's mainly because, and it's not just Japanese pitchers, it's many major league pitchers who need the full time to recover properly. You recover, but you don't recover to 100%. So it's like starting your car with a half a tank of gas. It runs okay, but it runs out quicker than it does when it's a full tank of gas. So look and see what happens there. Once again, Kikuchi was just a hard luck pitcher, giving up all the singles. I don't think one of them was hit over 90 miles an hour, but they were all put in play in the right place. And he had 4 walks. Once again, because of horrible umpiring. I don't know what it is if his ball moves later than most, but he has more calls go against him than any pitcher that I've taken notice of. And hopefully that'll turn around for him also.
Yeah, hopefully that changes. And Bobby, I do have a question for you. So we talk about how this little bit of shortened rest could affect some of these pitchers, right? In Japan, they do have the 6-man rotation. They don't play every day. There are off days every single week. And they also typically tend to go further into games when they do pitch. Do you think that and in America, it's a little bit different now? Like pitchers are, if you're lucky, you're getting 5, 6, unbelievable. Do you think that also has an effect? Like they come out, they don't pitch as much as maybe they're used to or how much they did in Japan in a certain start, and then they have this different rest. Do you think that also adds in?
Of course. Yeah. As I said, it affected Nolan Ryan, when he pitched for me, the greatest flamethrower that ever stepped on the mound, the guy who could pitch, 300 innings in a year and who liked to go deep in the game. The day games were always different. Sometimes the hitters were sleepy also, but yeah, there's Nolan Ryan up there. But day games affected him because he needed the full time to recover. And it's not really a mental thing. It's a physical thing. And the body has to get used to, throwing in between starts. A pitcher will start a game and then he'll have a bullpen session that he throws in between his next start. And that bullpen session, Japanese pitchers use for their feel and their touch. And they're used to throwing long bullpen sessions, where in the States, guys start minimizing how many throws they throw in a bullpen session. And that's all because of recovery. So you have to keep an eye to that and, wonder how everyone's going to react to it. I don't think Loki Sasaki should pitch on 5 days in a day game on his 5th day. I don't think he should ever do that, at least until next year. And his routine gets to be one that is more like the major league routine than it is a Japanese routine.
Yeah, it makes sense. Definitely don't want to rush him into that. And if he is going to do that, got to give him some time to acclimate and get himself really adjusted to the MLB.
It's just not easy to tell your body, hey, get adjusted to, hey, recover quicker. And you have to drink more fluids. I mean, there's a routine that the training staff tries to implement, but it's still a different routine. And anything that's different takes some time to adjust to.
Yep. And these guys still adapting, doing a great job. All these pitchers, especially Yusei Kikuchi, getting a little bit of tough luck. All of them getting a little bit of tough luck. That's what happens on the mound, though. All of them continue to improve and will continue to improve throughout this season.
And one of the terms that you hear often when a pitcher's pitching is he ran out of gas. Obviously, that is a reference to a car that is driving and it runs out of gas and it goes slower and slower and comes to a stop. Often a pitcher, when he throws a certain amount of pitches in a game, and again, as you mentioned, in Japan, it's usually more pitches, and in MLB, it's less pitches per game. But as soon as it starts to go down, the coach and the manager should see it, recognize it, and realize that he's out of gas. So it's time to get a new pitcher in there who has a full tank of gas. Is there any other saying we want to deal with this week?
Yeah, another saying. This one kind of has to do with what we were talking about earlier, Wrigley Field. High pop-ups, sometimes referred to as a can of corn. Maybe not all those are a can of corn at Wrigley Field when the wind's blowing, but a can of corn. It's supposed to be an easy fly ball that you're right underneath, should catch it. But Bobby, why do they call it a can of corn? Like, are you catching corn? Like, what is that? I don't know why.
Yeah, in the early days of baseball, there was a place that everyone went shopping. That was the general store. And everything was at the general store. And corn was one of the things that wasn't bought that much in a can. It was bought fresh often, but it was also in a can. So they stored the can of corn at the highest level because people didn't want it that often. And the storekeeper would take a big stick and put it up to the top of the shelf and knock the can off of the top shelf, and he'd have a basket on the bottom that he would catch the can of corn in. It would come straight down, boop, into the basket, and they call it a can of corn when it's an easy fly ball.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that story.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to the Baltimore chop. Sometimes you'll listen to a U.S. game and the announcer would see a ball that's hit and it has a big hop, and they call it a Baltimore chop. And that's because in the early 1900s, the Baltimore team always made sure that in front of the home plate, the dirt was really hard, and their hitters tried to chop down on the ball and hit these balls that would be chopped and be a Baltimore chop that was a high hop and so high that they would beat it out at first base. Baltimore chop, up, can of corn, up and down. I guess we got a couple of those today, Frankie.
That's some cool stories. Two really awesome stories that I'd never heard before. And that sounds
in the
almost
basket.
like
Remember the basket at Wrigley Field, folks. That's why. Catch the people, not to catch the trash that people are throwing onto the field, but to catch the people from falling onto the field. That's kind of cool too.
And now the drunk bleacher creatures in the outfield at Wrigley, they can't run races on the fence and fall over. They just do the beer snakes where they finish their drink, they take their cups and they put them together and make a really long line. They call it the beer snake.
We have to have a picture of that next week, the beer snake, where sometimes it'll go all the way up the bleachers, come all the way down. And can you imagine the hundreds, if not thousands of beers that are being consumed in the bleachers? Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of our story for this week. We're talking about those players who are making great adjustments and also making great contributions at the major league level. We'll talk more about them next week, so stay tuned. This is brought to you by Steel Sports, and it's called Bobby Valentine to Hanashima Show with Frankie Rampant. See you next week.